Thank you very much for inviting DG Health and Consumers to take part in your debate this afternoon. I'm not such a good party guest as Monique because I don't have a slide that says it, but happy birthday anyway. And by the way, I was not in Monique's brainstorming this morning, but some of the things I'm going to say are very similar to the things that she's just said to you. We come at the issue of sustainable consumption from the perspective, obviously, of a policymaker and a regulator. And for us, the key concept has been, over time, the average consumer. What would an average consumer do? The average consumer to the European Court is someone who's reasonably well informed, reasonably observant, and circumspect. And I suspect you all think you're average consumers. And you might actually meet that definition. But the average consumer isn't reasonably well informed, circumspect, and observant. And a lot of our research tells us that. Why? First of all, consumers have gaps in their knowledge, but perhaps more importantly, they don't have the skills that we expect them to have. They're not as numerate as we think they are. They find difficulty in decoding labels or information on packaging. They have biases. Monique has already said this. One particular one, which I think is important to sustainability, is what's called the present bias. People are short-sighted. They would prefer gratification today to benefits for the entire community tomorrow. Consumer awareness and behavior. If you ask consumers if they think the environment is important and do they want to do their bit to help sustainability, 9 out of 10 of them will tell you, yes, it's very important. And 70% of them will even tell you they're prepared to pay more for sustainable products. You put somebody at the checkout, though, in a supermarket, and you'll find that the picture is very different. So what they say and what they do is different, and we need to bridge that gap. Consumer trust and awareness. 50%, half of all consumers, mistrust the information they're given about environmental characteristics, sustainability. And quite a lot of consumers say that they have directly encountered misleading information about the sustainable aspects of a product, which they subsequently felt or discovered to be untrue. Information overload, Monique has already mentioned, it's coming at us from all sides. No wonder housewives are desperate. Sustainable choice is not always easy, and that's not only because it sometimes costs more or takes more effort to be sustainable, but it's not always easy to know what is the sustainable choice. Is it better, the famous green beans example, is it better to buy green beans from the Netherlands, where they have been grown in glass houses which need heating throughout the year, or is it better to buy them imported from Kenya, where they grow in the natural climate, but then you have the transport costs? How does anybody know? How does the average consumer know? And finally, framing. What you see counts more than what you're going to read. And as an example, look at this. You might think at first glance, these are two pictures of the same thing. In fact, on the left, you have detergents, and on the right, you have soft drinks. And that's a close-up. Again, on the left, you have soaps, and on the right, you have soft drinks. Arguably, it's illegal because you're not supposed to have food-imitating products, but we'll leave that bit aside for the moment. It's hard being a consumer. We pick up every day, unexpected or unknowingly, we pick up signals from packaging, from the way products are displayed in the supermarkets, and we act upon them. That's simply another one. So, what is the European Commission's approach to all this? In May, we published something called the European Consumer Agenda, which looks at all aspects of consumer policy up to, say, 2020. We look at the needs of consumers and how we see consumer policy developing over the next 8 to 10 years. And we have made an especial effort to talk about sustainable consumption, which needs to take into account the way consumers behave in the real world. So we want our policies to be based on evidence. We want to test policy interventions. Labelling, it's very important to actually try out labels on real consumers to see how real consumers respond to them before you mandate them in legislation. This is one of the problems. It may have worked, the energy efficiency labelling, but we've now got to a point where we need to revise it. How do you revise it on a regular basis as products become more highly performing? How do you revise it on a regular basis so that it still makes sense to consumers? What we say is go out and test the alternatives on different consumers. Business has been doing this for years. Policymakers are getting off to a very slow start here. For us, the sustainable choice should not be the expensive choice. Sustainability should be something that every consumer can aspire to and can afford. And obviously, we need to protect people against misleading information and claims. So for us, information, clear, comprehensive, comparable, and most of all, credible. And that means involving not just the people who are giving you the information, but also the people who are on the receiving end. So we're very keen on multi-stakeholder platforms. We're very keen on third-party verification of information which is used by business to promote the environmental credentials of their products. Monique has already referred to this dialogue that we're now running on environmental claims. This was launched at last year's European Consumer Summit. We'll report back to this year's, the last Consumer Summit. We'll report back in spring 2013. And it has the merit of bringing all sides of the discussion together. So it brings together businesses of all kinds, the people who produce the washing machines, the people who produce the detergents. It brings together academics who can talk about perception of behavioral perception, behavioral science, policymakers from different parts of the Commission, from DG Environment, from Health and Consumers, from DG Justice, who are responsible for consumer protection legislation. We look at examples of good practice. We look at all of the background research that is going on. We are undertaking ourselves some studies on environmental claims in food and non-food products. And we hope this will feed in, inter alia, into report and updated guidance on the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive. One of the hardest areas for consumer protection authorities to police is environmental claims, because it's very difficult for them to demonstrate that a claim is unfair, not substantiated, not supported by evidence. And we're also working with our colleagues elsewhere in the Commission to build a single market for green products. Now, this is a very confusing. So now this is where I contradict everything I've just said, because it's impossible to understand this diagram without some explanation. But if you look along the bottom axis, that's the sustainability of products. So at this end, you get products which are not sustainable, and at the other end, you get cutting-edge products. And then the vertical axis is the number of products on the market. And what you have, of course, is most people's products are bang in the middle. They're reasonably sustainable, but they're not cutting edge. And you have some at this side which are really not good for the environment. How do we intervene? First of all, at this end of the scale, the Commission intervenes to take the worst products out of the market by the Eco-Design Directive, by the detergents legislation. So we actually prohibit access to the market to the very worst products. Then in the middle, you have a large area which is covered by information, by energy labelling, as you saw in the in the previous speakers, the A+ and the ++, A++. The Energy Labelling Directive is, of course, sponsored by European legislation, but there are also voluntary interventions, and that's where the A.I.S.E Charter also comes in as very helpful in informing consumers and encouraging them to make more sustainable purchasing decisions. And then right at the end, I think you have the competitive advantage, those producers who are really going for the niche market of people who are actively searching out green products. Part of the labelling is obviously the eco label, which Monique has already mentioned. It's been around since 1992. We've made it easier to apply for in the last few years. We've simplified it, refined the application process. It's voluntary. It's updated regularly, so it continues to reward the best in class. And detergents, the detergent sector has been successful in operating the eco label. There are 6 product groups, washing powders, dishwasher detergents, and so on. And more people are applying. Of course, it's always nicer to see more. Finally, and this is my last slide, you'll be pleased to know, there are lots of labels around the world. Lots and lots and lots. You'll recognize some of yours, you'll recognize one of ours. The problem for the consumer, the poor little angry bird down there in the corner, is how do they know which ones they can rely upon, which ones they can trust, which ones are independently verified, which ones take in all aspects, so not just the point of use aspects, but the overall life cycle of a product. It's not easy being a consumer in the 21st century. Thank you very much.